It was supposed to be an ordinary Monday morning. The kind where you sip your coffee too fast, rush through traffic, and brace for another round of passive-aggressive emails. But that morning turned into something I'll never forget. I walked into the office at 8:58 a.m., 2 minutes early, just like always. I wasn't late. I never was. But my manager, Claire, was already waiting for me at my desk, arms crossed, lips pressed so tight they looked like a single line drawn with a ruler. She didn't say good morning. Instead, she lifted a single sheet of paper, shaking it in my face. "This is what you call work," she snapped, loud enough for the others to hear. "This is garbage. You've embarrassed the entire department." I froze. The open plan office went dead silent. I looked at the report she was holding. It was the quarterly budget projection. A document I had worked on for 48 hours straight, barely sleeping or eating to meet her impossible deadline, but I followed. "Your instructions," I tried to explain. Claire didn't let me finish. "Don't talk back," she barked. "This is why no one here respects you. You don't deliver. You don't think. You're just a body occupying space." Laughter. From somewhere in the back. I couldn't even see who it was. It didn't matter. My stomach twisted. My hands started shaking. I could feel the tears welling up, but I wouldn't let them fall. Not here. Not in front of her. Instead, I stood there, numb, my face burning with humiliation as Claire went on, mocking the formatting, the calculations, even the font I had used. She ended with a smirk. "Fix it. Or don't bother coming in tomorrow." Gasps. Some eyes turned away. Some just stared, awkward and pitying. No one said anything. I walked out. My legs felt like jelly, but I made it to the elevator. As soon as the doors closed, I collapsed. I cried. I hated crying. But I cried like a child that night. I didn't sleep, but I didn't just cry. I thought something inside me, something deep and quiet and ancient, woke up, remembered who I was before all this. Before I let this place shrink me. Before I let Claire silence me, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to explain. I was going to show them. All of them. Especially her. Claire had publicly humiliated me. But what would come next? Would make her regret ever opening her mouth. The next morning, I walked into the office like a shadow, silent. Unreadable. I greeted no one. Just sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and began typing. People watched me from the corners of their eyes, waiting to see if I'd break again. If I'd plead with Claire. If I'd grovel. I didn't. What they didn't know is that the humiliation I felt the day before didn't crush me, it refined me. Something had shifted inside. That night after the breakdown, I had stayed up, not to wallow in self-pity, but to build a plan. A bold one. Ruthless. Strategic. Dangerous. You see, Claire had made a mistake. She humiliated the one person who knew the back end of everything, the client contacts, the data systems, the pitch templates, the pain points no one else could see, because I wasn't just the quiet one in the office. I was the observant one. I had been silently studying everyone for 2 years. Including her. So I used what I knew of first. I pulled together a flawless corrected version of the report she'd trashed. Not because I wanted her approval, but because I had another destination in mind. Then I wrote a proposal. One she didn't authorize. One I wasn't supposed to write. But it was sharp. Groundbreaking. Full of creative angles on a major client campaign that had stalled for months. The data backed it. The vision elevated it. And it came from someone who, until yesterday, was invisible. I sent it. Not to Claire, but directly to David Mendoza, our regional director. Someone who hadn't returned my emails in 6 months. But this time, I wrote like a fire had been lit in me, and I ended the email with something bold. I know I don't have the title or the recognition, but I see clearly what's broken and how to fix it. If it doesn't spark your interest, delete this and pretend I never existed. But if it does, then we both know something needs to change. I hit send. 10 minutes later, I got a reply. Can you meet at 4 p.m. today? Just us. When I looked up from the screen, Claire was standing nearby, watching me. She was smirking like she had already rehearsed the words, "Are you lost, or looking for another job yet?" But I just smiled, not fake. Not scared. Just a quiet, deadly kind of smile, because she didn't know. Not yet. But soon, I had planted a seed. And that seed was already growing roots, under her chair. At 4 p.m., I stepped into the glass conference room. David was already waiting. Close the door, he said. I did, and then everything started to shift. When I stepped into the conference room, my heart was pounding like a war drum. But my face? Calm. Composed. A porcelain mask that hid the wildfire inside. David Mendoza was not a man easily impressed. Known for his poker face and brutal honesty, he was the kind of executive who could fire someone and then ask for their badge before the tears had time to fall. I had watched him from a distance for months. He was sharp, decisive, and allergic to mediocrity. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. I did. He didn't waste time. I read your proposal. Twice. My hands were clasped on my lap, the only way I could keep them from trembling. And? I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. He leaned forward. Claire never mentioned any of these strategies. Not once. That's because she never gave me the space to speak, I replied. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. So you're saying you've been sitting on this level of insight all along? No, I said. I've been developing it. Watching. Analyzing. Learning. Waiting for the right moment to say something that couldn't be ignored. He nodded slowly, tapping a pen against his notebook. You wrote with the confidence of a strategist. But your job title says you're what, a junior analyst? I smiled, finally. On paper. There was a pause. A thick, loaded pause. He was calculating, assessing. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. Why now? He asked. Why come to me directly? I looked him straight in the eye. Because yesterday, Claire humiliated me in front of the entire team. She ripped apart a report I spent 2 days building, and she did it not to correct, but to crush. David's face didn't move. But I saw it. A flicker. A brief narrowing of the eyes. He didn't like managers who made problems. He liked leaders who solved them. I realized then, I continued, that staying silent was never going to earn me respect. So I made a choice, to be bold. To be real. And to show you that the person you've been overlooking is the same person who could solve the client crisis we've been stuck in for 4 months. He opened a folder on the table. Inside was a printed copy of my proposal. He flipped through the pages slowly. You know this could cause friction, right? Between you and Claire? I nodded. There's already friction. I just stopped pretending it didn't exist. For a moment, the room was still, then David leaned back and said something I'll never forget. Let's shake the tree and see what falls. He reached into his drawer, pulled out a confidential folder, and slid it across the table. I want you to sit in on tomorrow's leadership meeting. You won't speak. You'll observe. Afterward, I want a full analysis of how we can restructure the campaign team based on your recommendations. You have 24 hours. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just an opportunity. It was a test, but I didn't flinch. I'll deliver. He nodded. You already are. As I walked out of the conference room, Claire saw me. She was walking past with her usual entourage, laughing like the queen of a court that feared her. But when she saw me stepping out of David Mendoza's private meeting room, her laugh faltered, her eyes narrowed. For the first time, I saw it. Uncertainty, good, let it settle in, because something had changed. I wasn't the timid employee she could bully anymore. I had taken a step out of her shadow, and into the light of my own power, went home that night and didn't sleep. But this time, it wasn't stress that kept me up. It was focus. Fire. Intention. I analyzed every project. Failure from the past year. I mapped team strengths and blind spots. I pulled data from places no one thought to look. I worked like a woman possessed, not by fear, but by clarity, and by morning, I had it, a reorganization strategy that didn't just fix what was broken, it made the entire system bulletproof. Walked into that leadership meeting as an observer. But I wouldn't stay one for long. What none of them knew was that a storm was coming. And I was the one holding the thunder. The glass doors of the executive conference room closed with a soft click behind me. Around the long polished table sat 12 of the most powerful people in the company, department heads, senior managers, top-level strategists, and there I was. The junior analyst who had no business being in that room. Claire was seated near the front, perfectly poised, a smug smile stretched across her lips as if she were the queen of this little empire. She didn't even glance at me. In her mind, I was probably there as punishment. Maybe David had summoned me to make an example out of my insubordination. I sat silently in the back corner, as instructed. No laptop. Just a notebook and a pen. Watching. Listening. The meeting began with the usual numbers, projections, and complaints. Claire presented a lifeless pitch on the failing campaign. Her tone was confident, but the content was hollow, same recycled ideas, dressed up in buzzwords. David sat at the head of the table, arms folded, face unreadable. Until Claire said something that made him tilt his head. We're considering scaling back on the original proposal, she said. There's no evidence the campaign will yield the engagement we hoped for. So our plan is to play it safe. Reduce budget, ride it out. A beat of silence, then David looked at me. Would you agree with that assessment? He asked casually. As if tossing a pebble into a still lake, Claire blinked. She wasn't expecting me to speak. Neither was anyone else. All eyes turned to me. I looked up. Calm. Ready. No, I don't agree. Claire's lips parted in a smile, one of those fake, warning smiles. Excuse me? I didn't even look at her. I looked straight at David. Playing it safe is exactly why we're losing. The campaign didn't fail because the idea was bad. It failed because the team wasn't aligned, and the execution was disjointed. The message was strong, but the delivery was fractured. Gasps from a few corners. An awkward shuffle in a chair. I continued. I spent the last 24 hours analyzing every touchpoint, cross-referencing engagement data with consumer feedback and internal workflows. The campaign didn't need a budget cut. It needed a restructure. David raised an eyebrow. Show us. I stood. From my bag, I pulled out 5 copies of a printed deck and passed them around. I had spent the entire night making it not only bulletproof, but beautiful. Clean layouts, sharp charts, clear strategy. Claire tried to laugh. This wasn't on the agenda. David cut her off. It is now. For the next 15 minutes, I walked them through a reimagined campaign structure. Not just theory, concrete. Action steps. New team leads. Redesigned funnel strategies. Targeted data feedback loops. Real-time metrics dashboards. Even a revised client presentation template already mocked up and ready. I didn't stutter. I didn't apologize. I owned the room. By the time I was done, no one was looking at Claire, they were looking at me. One of the directors leaned forward. How long have you been sitting on this? I started building it the moment I realized no one else would. Another director nodded slowly. We've needed this clarity for months. Claire was seething. I could feel the heat radiating off her. But she tried to regain control. With all due respect, she's not authorized to present proposals. She doesn't have leadership experience. This is wildly inappropriate. And that's when David dropped the bomb. She does now. Claire turned to him, her face frozen. What? I'm assigning her as interim strategic lead for the campaign, David said calmly. Effective immediately. The silence in the room was deafening. I stood still, trying not to let my hands shake. Claire's voice dropped an octave, venomous. You're replacing me? David's expression didn't change. No. I'm reallocating talent. You'll be supporting logistics moving forward. She'll run point on client strategy. It was done. Just like that, the woman who had dragged my name through the mud, who'd humiliated me in front of my peers, was now reporting to me. I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. I just nodded. The meeting ended, and people slowly filed out. Some patted me on the back. Some just stared in awe. Claire lingered behind. She approached me, eyes burning, voice low. You think this will last? That you've won? I met her gaze, unwavering. I didn't come to win. I came to build what you never saw. And it's only just beginning. She left without another word. I stood there, alone in the boardroom for a moment, the same room she once ruled. The same room I had once entered invisible. Now, it was mine. 2 weeks later, everything had changed. The campaign that had once been considered a failure was now surging with momentum. The numbers didn't lie. Engagement was up 47%. Client feedback had turned from cold silence to enthusiastic praise. Even the marketing press had started to whisper about a bold turn in strategy coming from our firm, and at the center of it all was me. Every morning, I walked through those glass doors with my head high. The same people who used to pretend I didn't exist now greeted me with nods of respect, sometimes even awe. I was no longer just the quiet one, the safe one, the one they could dump extra work on. I was the one they looked to, and Claire, she was still there, demoted in everything but title. Her desk, once next to the executive suite, had been moved closer to operations. Her nameplate now sat beneath mine on internal project boards. She avoided me at first. But when she couldn't anymore, she tried to play nice. Great job with that last pitch, she said one morning, forcing a smile. Thank you, I replied, polite but cool. It's amazing what people can do when they're not being screamed at. Her smile cracked. But she didn't respond. She knew, everyone did. The whispers had spread about what happened in the meeting room. About the way she had treated me. Some even started revisiting their own experiences with her, questioning what they had once accepted as normal. It was poetic, really. She hadn't just lost her position, she had lost her power, but I didn't waste my time celebrating her fall. I was too busy rising. One afternoon, David called me into his office. You've done more in 2 weeks than some people do in a year, he said, motioning for me to sit. You've got something rare, instinct, execution, and spine. I nodded, trying to stay composed, though my heart was hammering. He leaned back. There's a leadership summit in Berlin next month. I want you to go. Present this case study. Not just for our company, but for our global partners. I blinked. Are you serious? He smiled. Deadly. You've earned your seat at the table. Now make space for others like you. That night, I walked home under a sky full of stars. And I thought about the girl I was just a few weeks ago, the one holding back tears in an elevator, shaking from humiliation, wondering if she even mattered, and now here I was, not just seen. Not just heard. Respected, but the part that shocked her the most, the part that shocked Claire into silence, wasn't that I'd risen. It wasn't the promotion, or the accolades, or the campaign's success. It was that I did it without turning. Cruel, I didn't scream. I didn't humiliate her back. I didn't plot revenge, I simply stood up. And became undeniable, because the best kind of revenge is evolution, and mine had just begun.